All right, well, we can get started. Welcome, everyone. I am Megan Gieseker from ALA's Public Programs Office. My pronouns are she, her. I'm pleased to introduce today's webinar, Media Literacy Education for Adult Audiences, Demystifying AI. Before we start, I'd like to make a few quick announcements. Today's webinar is a presentation of ALA's Public Programs Office and is the first session of 5 in our Media Literacy Education for Adult Audiences Architecture of the Internet webinar series. This webinar series focuses on topics included in the recently published programming guide, which we will put into the chat for you. This project was made possible by a grant from the U.S. Institute of Museum and Library Services. The views, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this webinar do not necessarily represent those of the Institute of Museum and Library Services. Hopefully, many of you are familiar with Programming Librarian, a website of ALA's Public Programs Office. We have a lot of program ideas and an online learning library full of free webinars like this one. And next slide, please. A couple of notes about our virtual classroom. Only the presenter has microphone access. Live captions can be enabled by clicking on Show Captions. Please use the chat feature to engage with your peers. To ask questions of the presenter or ALA staff, please use the Q&A window. If you are experiencing any technical issues, please use the Q&A feature to communicate with ALA staff. Next slide, please. Now I would like to introduce our speaker for this afternoon. Dr. Brandy McNeil has transformed community access to technology, knowledge, and opportunity across the 89 branches under her stewardship as the Deputy Director of Branch Programs and Services at the New York Public Library. Dr. McNeil's game-changing innovations have forged successful partnerships between libraries and tech giants such as Apple, Spotify, and Google, to name a few. Her visionary leadership and dedication to community empowerment have led her to create the highly successful Tech Connect program, which has become a digital literacy model for libraries nationwide. She is the recipient of the 2017 Library Journal Movers and Shakers Award, a contributing writer for Public Libraries magazine, and a contributor to the book titled Libraryland, It's All About the Story, published in 2020. She also serves as president-elect of the Public Library Association and served on the Black Caucus of the American Library Association Executive Board. Dr. McNeil's expertise is not limited to her work in libraries. She holds a doctorate in business and an MBA in entrepreneurship and has worked for several Fortune 500 companies. And with that, I'd like to turn things over to Dr. McNeil.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm glad you are all here. We need as many people here to listen and talk about AI as possible. So happy that you're all here. So today what we are going to go over, and I have a lot to go over with you all, is going to be getting an understanding of AI, some basics and concepts. We'll also go over the importance of media literacy and AI education. And then I'm going to give you some strategies for educating adult patrons about AI. So let's jump right in so we can get to it all. So let's do the basics and concepts first. So what is AI? Essentially, artificial intelligence is the field of programming machines to make decisions based on dynamic real-world scenarios. And when you think of this, think of how when you go to book a flight, it's kind of pre-programmed with the information that's there. You know, that versus our kind of Gen AI world where it's kind of generating this new content based on what you put inside of it. And if you're thinking about what that means in its simplest form, I feel like this is the image that really does that. It's taking the input, putting it into this black box, and then an output comes out. And the reason why it's this black box is because, you know, it's kind of that no one really knows what's happening inside the box situation. And a good example of that is something I saw recently. So there was a test done to see what would happen with Uber drivers, and they all lined up their phones, and each of the drivers basically selected the same location that they were going to go to for a pickup. And for each of them, the pricing, like how much they would get paid, was slightly different. And so they contacted Uber about this, and they sent them to the policies and said, here's how we kind of predict what people's pricing would be. But even though they actually put in kind of all of the parameters that should make it somewhat equal, they still could not figure out, well, what is happening with the algorithm that is making some people get almost $3 more versus those who weren't. And so that's an example of something's happening in the black box. So when we think about AI, it's not just one technology, and it's important to know that, right? So it's machine learning, it's neural networks, it's natural language processing, it's deep learning. So it's not just one technology when we talk about AI. And so when we think about generative AI, the best way that I like to put it is generative AI is understanding context and generating that like human-like content versus traditional AI, which is kind of predicting outcomes from specific use cases. That's one of the best ways to kind of think about it. And so this chart really helps you to also think about it even from a training perspective because it is being trained. And so we'll keep that in mind as we go. And as everyone knows, you've used it probably in some type of way, shape, or form. Most people have. Right now, we know Facebook and Instagram. If you go on to those tools, the search is going to be AI now. Like you can't get around that. That's what it is. It's meta AI, and you can't get around that. However, a lot of these tools that I have on the screen, they do produce different results for different people. You know, I have examples where I'm watching something on Netflix, so is my friend. Her list of what gets pulled up versus mine, two totally different things. And it's based on what you're watching, what you're into, and it will kind of dish out different information to different people. At one point, it told me I was having a midlife crisis because I had watched one of these movies and I was just like, oh, wait a minute. So it is really interesting how it will pull up that information. And that was literally one of the categories it gave me. So when we think about AI, we also need to think about what's happening right now with AI. So everyone probably knows Apple just released its new phones. And so now there's this Apple Intelligence. Well, I believe that the fact that they're going to have this Apple Intelligence on the iPhones will give a bunch of people who might not have ever thought about AI, thought they were using AI, wanted to try or test AI. It's going to give them that opportunity to do that. And I think it's going to start to change how people think about AI in some ways because it will become a lot easier. It will be more user friendly to something that they're already familiar with, used to in terms of look and feel. And we know that the tool is going to allow people to do some of the same stuff that if you were to go out to an AI tool and put in this information, it's going to do some of those same things like writing an email and giving you summaries, generating images where you can create your own emojis, searching using natural language processing in order to, put a search in your photos to find a specific photo of somebody doing something or finding a video at a particular moment. That's the AI that's going to do that behind the tool. And so I think one of the things we have to keep in mind is AI is going to increasingly act as though it's a creative collaborator and tool for people. And that's just something to keep in mind. And it's also changing in every industry. I recently read where it was enabling, there was a study done or app created actually. And what it's doing is it is able to predict with 99% accuracy 30 times faster mammograms. And it is helping with eliminating unnecessary biopsies. And so this is from some research that's being done at the Houston Methodist Research Institute in Texas. So AI is everywhere and it's changing everything. So why is this important? And why is it important in relation to media literacy? And when we think about that, it's about thinking about the media that we consume more critically. And that's what's really important is that we make sure that as people are navigating, exploring, and experimenting with AI, that they're thinking about it in a critical way. And when we get later on in this session, I will go over all the reasons why people need to do that and think about it in that way. And it's more important now than ever. There was a study done, we all know the election's happening, and there was a study done by Elon University this August, and 78% of participants said that they believe that it is likely that AI will be abused to affect the election outcome. And so when you think of that, this is one of those aspects where it's really important that people understand AI and what can be done with that, and to think critically about what they're viewing. In addition, lack of media literacy and AI education can also result in wider skills gaps, increased economic inequality and social vulnerabilities. And so I think, as libraries really need to be there for people, and help out with this, as we have done in the past with every technology that's come out. So let's take a look at some of the information that we do know about AI and people. So who's using it? Well, right now, a study done by Barna shows that it's millennials and Gen Z who are going to be the most likely users of AI. This means that we have two generations, Gen X and Boomers, that are more than likely going to be behind the curve. And that's going to be important for us to know. In addition, Gen Z men are 25% more likely to have tried an AI tool compared to Gen Z women. So important to think about. Then when we look at the tasks that people are interested in, you'll notice in this Forbes survey that it's showing that AI tasks that people are doing are usually tasks that somehow relate to them socially or financially, which are two really important aspects in people's lives. So these are the things that people are most interested in. Then when we take a look at how it impacts the workplace, it impacts it really big. And so there's a study by Barna that also showed 1 in 3 working US adults say they use AI often or sometimes for their job. 2 in 5 adults also said that they agree that AI is going to change the way that they work. And among those who were full-time, it was 55%. So this is something that we are going to see more and more increasing. And so when we talk about another importance, well, it's important because of career readiness. Why is this AI and learning it and the education of it important? It can help people to be more efficient in their jobs. Obviously, it can help to boost productivity, reduce attrition, and it's really interesting how it's helping a lot of those who are early career workers. And the knowledge of the AI tools can give people a leg up in the workplace. So one of the things I like to do is to kind of see what's going on in the AI kind of world and take a look at jobs. So I don't know if people remember that Netflix, during the strike with the actors and the writers, Netflix had put out a position, and the position was for artificial intelligence specialists. And the pay for this job was up to $900,000. And when you think of that, it's just mind blowing. And this goes to show how important these bigger companies are thinking about AI, and that it is going to be something that we then need to think about. So that got me to thinking a little bit and doing a little bit more research. And so right now, there was a survey done by Slack Workforce Lab, and it showed that 70% of leaders say they won't hire someone without AI skills and would rather hire a less experienced candidate with AI skills than a more experienced person without them. That's huge. So then I said, well, let me take a look and see what other positions are out there right now, we can search it up right now. And so when I did that, Citibank, they're hiring right now. They want an AI software engineer, and they're paying up to $213,000. Geico was hiring. They want a senior product manager for their AI virtual assistant. They are paying up to $224,000. So we can see that AI is super big, super important to these companies, and we need to make sure that we have people prepared for this. So let's take a look at another area of importance, and that's going to be social benefits. I had the opportunity to go to the Lighthouse Guild and really see how AI is impacting those with other abilities. And it was amazing. It was amazing to see how they interacted with AI, the fact that they were able to give feedback to some of these AI companies to adjust the tools that they have to better help them. So it does mean that there will be some inclusion benefits. We already know about the medical advances. It can help people who own small businesses to be able to have better solutions for themselves. It can help with translation and breaking down some of those barriers in communication. And then there's also a social justice awareness part of this as well. And I'm really excited about what New York might possibly do. So there's new legislation, and it would require that New York City publish a list of AI tools approved for use by city agencies. And the goal is so that it would be transparent, and through the transparency, create accountability. And that's going to be key. The list would require the inclusion of a description of the data to which an AI tool would require access. This would contribute to public awareness of how the city is using New York's data, so the public could hold the city accountable to ensure they are serving residents well with the data. And so that to me says, okay, they are thinking about people and thinking about what this will mean. On the flip side, that media literacy that we're talking about, will people understand? And that's where, once again, where we come in, helping people to really understand AI and get educated about it. So let's then take a look at some of the learning benefits. With the increase in bad actors, people are out here preying and targeting people. You've got deep fakes, we've got phishing scams, we got voice duplication, we've got text tone impersonations. It is really important that people learn these technologies that are out here. I even had a phishing scam happen. Luckily, I'm a bit savvy, and so I was able to catch it. But essentially what happened with me is I got a voicemail from my son's grandfather, or so I thought. And it basically said that my son was in trouble and all of this other stuff. And so I immediately went in my phone. Me and my son, luckily, we share our Find My. And so I was able to see his location, and I'm like, okay, well, you're home with your grandfather, so what's going on? And so when I did that, I then called, and he was actually okay and everything was fine. But that's an example of them being able to take your voice just from, a 3-second hello and a question, and then, they can run with your voice. So once again, helping people to understand that, to know that, to question things when things happen is part of this AI literacy. And then there's also concerns. So one of the first big concerns that everybody has right now is job loss, right? Generative AI tools are really popular. People are like, okay, is AI coming for my job? And my thought process on that is really, that of not if you embrace it. There was a McKinsey report that was done, and it said that AI is going to shift in terms of its impact. It's going to be probably knowledge-based workers who it will shift with, who would typically get traditionally higher wages and certain educational requirements. And it means that it's going to require them to probably use generative AI. And if you think about it, it's going to be in the same way that we would use word processors or search engines. Like, that is going to become what would be the norm. But I don't want to kid anybody. It will result in some job loss. And I'm just going off of some of the information that I have seen of some new AI tools that will be coming out. And I'll discuss that a little bit further in this session. But, I think that there is an aspect of artificial intelligence that might replace some jobs, but it's also going to give competitive edge in the workplace for those who know it. And then there's bias. That's a big concern. And I'm going to have you watch this video so you can get an understanding of this.
Our ideas about technology that we think are normal are actually ideas that come from a very small and homogeneous group of people.
Vast amounts of data at incredible speeds.
Everybody has unconscious biases, and people embed their own biases into technology.
This kid got stopped as a result of facial recognition misidentification, and then used that as justification to search you. This is an innocent child.
Racism is becoming mechanized.
Systemic issues are only going to be hardwired into new technologies.
It's not just face classification, it's any data-centric technology.
Every day, we are all being scored.
Who gets hired? Who gets housing?
I am making predictions for your life right now.
So that's coded bias. If you get the opportunity, I would definitely say to check that out if you get a chance. The next concern is consent. And we all know that the data is being scraped. That data that's then being scraped has not been given to companies to scrape. And so what does that mean? What does that look like? And so there's a current case, everybody should know about it, the New York Times case that is happening, but I'm gonna let this play so you can kind of hear a little bit about what's going on.
Well, the New York Times is taking OpenAI and Microsoft to court. It's filing a federal lawsuit today against the maker of ChatGPT over copyright infringement. The Times says that millions of articles published in the paper were used to train automated chatbots that now compete with it as a source of reliable information. And while the Times is the first major American media organization to sue the companies over copyright issues like this, it follows authors like Sarah Silverman, who sued OpenAI and Meta earlier this year over similar concerns related to her book. We've reached out to both Microsoft and OpenAI for comment. So far, we've only heard back from OpenAI. It says it's, quote, surprised and disappointed with this development and hopeful that it will find mutually beneficial way to work together, as we are doing with many other publishers. NBC legal analyst Danny Cevallos is here to break this all down for us. Danny, can you walk us through what these allegations mean exactly? How does this work?
Well, they're basically alleging that the AI companies are taking this gigantic pile of copyrighted material and learning from it, training its AI programs so that they can generate content that will obviously be based on that material. I don't think the defendants will even dispute the fact that their AI programs are scanning or scouring or digesting this huge set of that material, including the plaintiffs, the New York Times, their content that they've been putting out for, I guess you could say, centuries now. I don't think that's much in dispute. What will be in dispute in this case is what are they doing with it? Because that'll be key to copyright. When you think about it, what these companies are doing are exactly what you and I do. In fact, the legal stuff that I talk about today, the words that come out of my mouth, are from me reading copyrighted materials by law professors on this topic and then spitting it out as my own without crediting them and without paying them a dime, even though I consumed their copyrighted materials. That's exactly what AI is doing. The thing that scares plaintiffs like the New York Times is that AI can churn out content and it can be remarkably close to the original content, and nobody's going to be compensated for that.
And in some cases, it's a verbatim account of what the New York Times was reporting. So how is the court going to be weighing this question?
Exactly that. So your question actually includes the important part. What matters is the output. The digesting is one thing. It's what is the output. Is it identical or very close to what the copyrighted material is? Then you have a problem. But if it's inspired or it's just derivative, then you might not have a copyright violation. And then you get into secondary issues of who's really doing the copyright violation. Is it the program or is it the human asking the program to commit a copyright violation? It's the age-old, you may not remember, but back when I was a kid, you had two tape deck boom boxes, which are probably made mostly for copyright violations, for taping one music to the other tape. But there are lawful uses as well. So it's really about, is the user the violator or the program itself, the machine?
It'll be fascinating to see what the court decides, and a whole industry swings in the balance.
It does, and that's why I think ultimately the Times has to lose, whether the court says it out loud or not. This is about progress. If the Times wins, progress, AI progress, loses.
Danny Cevallos, thank you.
So as you can see, there are many concerns surrounding AI and copyright. I think this is a case that everybody needs to keep their eyes on, see what happens. I think one of the solutions that will be out there for most people, though, who are not big New York Times companies, will be copyright collectives, which will involve multiple people or organizations coming together to negotiate copyright compensation. And it would need to be done on an international level. And the reason why is because data sets aren't trained on just US data. So that to me means that some things need to be thought about when we think about how are we going to handle cases like this. Another solution that I think we really need to be paying attention to, in the US here, we don't actually have a law or anything put in place, but the EU does. And so the EU AI Act actually states in section 1C, it requires that providers of general purpose AI models put in place a policy to respect their EU copyright law. And so by actually putting some type of law in place, they're doing something about it. I think this is where the US really needs to think about what we need to do as well. And so let's talk about another concern, which is hallucinations. I'm gonna play another video.
We've been talking a lot about artificial intelligence recently, and now Air Canada says an AI chatbot has gone rogue.
Well,
what?
So here's what happened. So a while back, Air Canada was using a chatbot as kind of a virtual online assistant, right?
Sure.
Which several companies do now. You're not chatting to a person, you're actually chatting to a chatbot, and it might be powered by an artificial intelligence system. A guy was looking for a bereavement flight, which is where you need to go to a funeral or something, and sometimes you can get a last-minute discount. The chatbot told him, hey, you can retroactively do this if you want. If you just submit your ticket 90 days after the fact, we'll give you that discount, no problem. Problem is that's not how their policy actually works. They say you got to do it in advance of your flight. The long story short is he goes and, he goes to the funeral, whatever, comes back, applies for this discount. They said, no, you should have checked our written policy. That's the policy that matters. He goes, I'm sorry, you want me to check your website to double check against your website virtual assistant
Right,
thing that
your
you gave me?
chatbot have checked
This
the
is your
website?
website. And this is the question that's going to come up as we see more of these chatbots, is who does that represent? Does it actually represent the company that's using it? Does it represent the maker of it, or is it just kind of going rogue, doing its own thing? It's kind of trying to copy stuff that it's seen on the internet and trying to predict what it'll say. But Air Canada has specifically said they want to use these chatbots where they used to have more customer service people. Those customer service people would get in trouble if they told you the wrong thing.
Okay, an interesting one, Brad Miller.
So as you can see, hallucinations are real and can lead to real potential lawsuits. And so in this case, the guy did win the lawsuit, but it's something for us to think about as libraries start using chatbots more. I think we need to make sure that we constantly have some type of human interaction with our AI tools as a must, so that whatever it's learning and training itself, there is some type of human interruption there. So now we're going to take a look at deep fakes, which is yet
Milky, thank you.
Concern.
And to hear Brad dive in.
Let's go into that one.
New this morning, artificial intelligence can feel like it is everywhere. Sometimes it's places you wouldn't even expect.
It's important to be able to identify artificial images, especially ahead of the election. 13 on your side's Julie Koharic joins us live now with a deep dive into deep fakes. Hey, Julie.
Yeah, good morning. The new technology has a lot of problems, from graphic images to fake political statements. That's why Michigan is at the forefront of AI legislation. I spoke to an expert who walked me through how to tell what's real and what's fake.
You've probably seen them, but you might not know. Images like this, viral online but non-existent in real life.
If we have something that you're sort of questioning that is this real, just sort of use your intuition.
Denton Bobbeldick specializes in artificial intelligence at GVSU.
Professor interviewed
He used 2 free AI services to create images of our interview.
by blonde hair reporter.
Images like this show the creativity and accessibility of AI.
Very easy as opposed to you, using your artistic talents.
Another service shows the rules and limitations. When he tried to make me a young reporter, he got this message, flagging it as potentially unsafe. But if he were to pay for the service, he could bypass this concern.
There's also some negative things that can happen. We saw what happened with Taylor Swift.
Pornographic, non-consensual AI photos of Swift went viral. bringing to light the lack of legislation around AI. So how can you tell what's real and what's fake?
AI still has a hard time with hands. It's not so much the hands, but it's the number of fingers.
Let's go back to this image. Besides the fact that it doesn't look like us, you can see the program had a really hard time with the hands, whether it's the placement or the amount of fingers or both. Going into the 2024 election season, knowing what to look for might be more important than ever.
Deepfakes are largely unregulated. Michigan is now, one of the leading states.
That's where Michigan's lawmakers enter the chat.
So that our voters don't have to question every single thing that they see online.
In April, the Republican National Committee released an ad to show how they see the future if President Biden is reelected.
For Joe Biden.
These images, realistic but entirely AI generated.
Taiwan.
It's disclosed in small print at the top that it was made with AI. This law means this disclosure is now required at the state level.
We're asking that the disclosure not only say that it's AI generated, but also if the material is misleading.
More legislation may be on its way.
But it's a difficult issue because you're looking at the whole chain of events.
To keep the law in sync with the new tech.
So there's lots of different areas that could be legislated.
But it could be only one key.
It's a very difficult thing.
To solve an emerging problem.
Michigan is now one of only 5 states that has deepfake legislation for political ads. The representative I spoke to says the next step is regulating explicit AI images. Jay, back to you.
So that's really important because without legislation, a lot of things can run rampant really fast. And deepfakes is one of the things that I think I'm super concerned about as I look at the overall landscape. And that's because the images have gotten so good. Britannica Education, and I have a link when I provide you all the resources, they have a link where it's called Real or Fake, and it's quiz. And when you go through it, I'm pretty good. AARP has one as well. And I also have the link for that for you all. And when I went through that one, I was able to easily tell, I'm like, yeah, this is fake, this is real, no problem. But when I got to the Britannica one, I wasn't sure. And so I think that is an area where I have some real serious concern because I also believe that this is where we're going to start to see some of the changes and shifts in that concern about job loss. And I want to show you what I mean by that. And so this is Sora. I'm going to show you what this looks like. There is no audio because OpenAI's Sora is just a tool without audio at the moment. Don't even know if they're going to be adding audio, but it's about video creation. And as you can see, it's able to create videos of superb quality. Now imagine you as an animator who takes the time to draw and do things out and work on your systems to create the most amazing animation. And now you can just kind of do it. I don't know how many steps because I don't know how OpenAI Sora works because it's not open to the public, but being able to generate something like that. Same thing with the dogs, right? If we think about what could possibly happen if a bad actor got a hold of being able to use this type of tool saying, oh, such and such is happening with the dogs, give money now. Same thing that they also have a video where it's actually kind of showing history and what things look like back in the day. Well, is there going to be bias in that? Is this really what things look like back in the day? How are we going to verify where this info came from? Where did they get that info from in order to recreate this scene? Is this really what people look like? So I think there will be a lot of questioning that needs to happen as you look at this, but then also, you know, a lot of people, once again, a lot of people's jobs who would be an actor or, you know, be a someone in the background, be a person who does all the stunts. Are they now in jeopardy because AI is here and it can create it? So those are some things to think about as we kind of take a look. And you guys can watch the rest of this video when you guys take a look at the slides. And so the last concern is really around climate change. I'm going to show you this one. I thought this was really interesting because a lot of times people wonder, oh, like, how do things run? Where's the internet? Where is it? Where are all these servers at? Well, this is going to help to answer some of that, but then it also really truly explains the amount of power that is being used to generate all of this technology.
In our series Climate Watch, we're focusing on the surging demand for energy in the U.S. It's growing significantly for the first time in decades. Experts say it's forecast to hit record highs both this year and next, straining the nation's aging power grid and creating more planet-warming emissions. A big part of the demand is from a growing number of data centers across the nation. And listen to this, from the rise of artificial intelligence. Senior national and environmental correspondent Ben Tracy traveled to Utah to learn about the race to find enough electricity to power the future.
And these fans are cooling our data centers.
On a rooftop near Reno, Nevada, Amanda Peterson-Corio wanted us to see these whirling fans. They're cooling these endless rows of servers and miles of cable, the arteries of the internet inside a Google data center.
It's hard to imagine that there is a physical location where the internet lives, but this is it.
Is this everything from like somebody's doing a Google search, somebody's watching a cat video, and that's all coming through here?
Absolutely. It's all that and more.
As the global head of data center energy, her job is to find more juice to keep the company's power-hungry machines humming. A single data center can use as much power as 80,000 U.S. homes.
It's going to take innovation to really think about how are we going to scale this faster to keep up with the pace of growth.
The nation's roughly 2,700 data centers are mostly run by big tech firms and consumed more than 4% of all electricity in the U.S. in 2022. That's projected to more than double to 9% by 2030. It's already taxing the nation's aging power grid, and the demands of artificial intelligence are just beginning to grow. A ChatGPT query uses nearly 10 times the electricity of a typical internet search.
Is this amount of electricity use sustainable?
It's a real challenge. As we look to the next decade, those demands continue to grow. And the real challenge is figuring out how we can do this in a way that meets our climate goals.
Google's planet-warming emissions rose by 13% last year and have jumped nearly 50% since 2019. The company has invested heavily in wind and solar and says 64% of the time its operations run on clean energy. But when the sun isn't shining and the wind isn't blowing, data centers still rely on dirty fossil fuels that contribute to climate change. So big tech is now scrambling to bring more clean power to the grid.
We can develop large projects that will really move the needle on the electric grid and climate change.
Tim Latimer is CEO of Fervo Energy, which is partnering with Google to boost geothermal power, harnessing carbon-free heat from deep inside the earth.
How far down are you drilling here?
Right now we're at about 12,200 feet, and by the time we get there, the temperature is over 400 degrees Fahrenheit.
Right now, geothermal accounts for less than 1% of electricity in the U.S., but Fervo wants to change that.
How big of a solution can this be?
Yeah, we think that geothermal could be as much as 20% of the U.S. electricity grid.
Google plans to use Fervo's geothermal power to help run its Nevada data centers, and eventually others around the world, aiming to eliminate its use of coal and gas by 2030.
We need something that has that reliability, that works 24/7. To get us all the way there.
So when the sun is not shining and the wind is not blowing, this thing's still cranking.
The earth is still hot.
For CBS Mornings,
So that's an example of how AI is affecting climate change. Technology in itself is affecting climate change. And once again, another thing to kind of be aware of and the concerns and how we can help people to think about one, what could potentially be some solutions, but also what does that mean for people? I mean, them drilling into the ground and the earth, and they're saying that they want to do more of that. What does that mean? I mean, I'm seeing on TV other things happen to our earth and cracks and things like that. So could any of that be coming from what we are doing and causing? So some things to think about as we take a look at things, but that doesn't mean that everything is bad.
In our series Climate Watch, we're focusing on the...
I also want to talk about kind of the future of AI. And I think the future of AI is really, all is not lost. Transparency is going to be the big key. That's the best way to go. It's going to be the big key because we really need explainable AI. And explainable AI is really going to help people to comprehend what is being done kind of behind the scenes and being transparent about that. And you're starting to see a lot of companies that are doing that. And so explainable AI contains explainable data. So what data was used to train the model and why, what features and weights were used for the particular prediction, explainable algorithms, right? What are the individual layers and thresholds used for a prediction? These are all the things that I think will help. So we need transparency. We need to be able to have the ability to question what is happening with the tool, and then also just ease of understanding it, right? We need to be able to understand at the simplest level what is being done behind the scenes within AI. And so how do we have some strategies that can help our adult patrons get educated about AI? So I'm going to give you some of those strategies. So one is going to be obviously really exploring the tools. There are many tools out there. So these are some of the most popular ones that I've put up. But there are so many. Gamma is another one that is not on here, but it creates presentations. Scribe is another one that can help you to create all types of documents. NVIDIA is a really amazing AI tool that will create videos and voice cloning that is out there and available. So once again, get familiar with some of the tools and their uses and what you can do with them. That's the first part that I would say that we really need to think about. The next thing will be to really start thinking about providing our patrons with what are the pros and cons, making sure that they understand the tools somewhat in depth, giving them examples. So like a pro could be, okay, how can you use ChatGPT to do a conversation where you're able to learn, say, French? So maybe you don't have someone at home that you can constantly talk back and forth with. Well, you can use AI to do that, right? And that might be a pro to show them how AI could be used. But then also you want to discuss with them the cons and how something can have a bias. And so, something as simple as creating an invite where you say, I want to be able to invite all the employees to this thing that we're going to do. And it says, oh, bring your dancing shoes. Well, is that excluding people who might have some type of physical disability? So, right, thinking more thoughtfully and thinking through what AI could generate and is it actually the correct thing, questioning it. So that'll be another thing. Microsoft Copilot is another tool that is out there. I think the video I have here, I'm not playing it, but just so you know, when you play it and watch it, I think it's a video that really shows people all the different things that you can do with Microsoft Copilot. And I think it's important when you're showing videos to the patrons, you want to be able to show them a multitude of things that can be done. Once again, also including some of the pros and cons. Another good way to do that as well is also by showing them the differences between two platforms. And so this video here is one that you would be able to use where you can show them, well, what is Perplexity versus ChatGPT and what are some of the pros and cons of each of the tools and why you might use one over the other. So I think that that's a really good way to have a strategy for going about that. And then in terms of strategy steps for you, what would your task be? I think it's really important that you really think about getting familiar with the tools, practice your prompt engineering techniques, get some PD, which is why you're here now. You want to also ensure that you're understanding the data privacy and security issues that go with that. Cybersecurity is huge right now. I think everyone should be looking and thinking about that as well. You also want to make sure that you're following what's going on, and that could be through AI blogs. There's AI podcasts, following the right people on LinkedIn or X could be another way. You want to pay attention to the news, pay attention to some of the evolving cases, like the New York Times one. And then also, if you're able to attend AI-related conferences that have nothing to do with libraries. That is so important to really understand what is going on in the rest of the world out there from a whole different level. And it really opened my eyes when I attended an AI summit that literally had nothing to do with libraries. So I could really see how are people using it? What are they thinking about? What are they coming up with? They had, at the one I went to, they had a lot of legalese. So it's great to be able to talk to attorneys about this and what their thoughts were. So it's a really good thing to do. And then I would say the next set of tasks, which would be educating the patrons, there's a couple of things you can do here. So, conduct some tech talks, maybe get some industry experts to come in, have some local small businesses, if you know they're using AI in any way, shape, or form, to have them come in and talk about their use of it and what they've been doing with it, or some unique ways that maybe patrons are using it. Classes, obviously, you can do varied tools. You can say it's very much for a specific thing. Maybe you cover something about being safe. Social experiments, right? Use some of the games and quizzes, test people, have them have fun getting to understand AI and like how far it can go. So that could be another thing that you could do at your local library, as well as obviously reading lists. If your library has a podcast, maybe you have it as a update on your podcast regularly to talk about AI. And then, maybe even possibly a movie night where you're sharing thoughts about how AI could impact communities. And then I want to leave you with some resources. So this is the page where I have some sites that you should definitely check out, some books. I did put one of the podcasts on here. That's Hard Fork. It's a New York Times podcast, but they really dig really deep. And I like how they make it so that it's easy to understand what they're talking about and they don't get all technical. And then Machine Learning Street Talk is a really good YouTube channel to check out and get some information from. And the last thing I just want to say and leave you with, I think that, what we have to do right now is think about things with a growth mindset, but also an experimental mindset, because that's the best way for us to go about this challenge. Don't accept AI's output at face value, challenge assumptions, triangulate. These are the things that we need to be doing so that we can help our patrons. I would also say that you want to make sure that you're following other outlets such as Verge, Mashable, Wired, CNET, TechCrunch. The Library of Congress is doing a lot in AI, so you want to follow them. Commonsense.org actually has some AI literacy lessons for all age groups, so you might want to check them out as well. And then I am going to leave you with my info here. So I know I discussed a lot, said a lot. So if you would like, you can reach out to me through any of these channels. And thank you so much. We'll go to Q&A.
Thank you so much for that great presentation. Certainly gave us a lot to think about and consider. So we have just over 10 minutes for Q&As. You're getting lots of hearts and claps in the chat, so thank you so much. I know everyone's really enjoyed it and has a lot of gratitude for what you've presented us with today. We will try to get to as many questions as we can in this time. So I've already started compiling some, and we'll start with this one. How do you recommend agencies or businesses approach the gap between AI features being deployed by IT departments and workers actually using them or being trained to use them? In my experience, IT deploys AI tools which just show up and workers have no idea how to actually utilize AI tools.
And what was the first part of the question? How do
you recommend they approach the gap between the features being deployed by IT departments and workers actually being trained and knowing how to use them?
Yeah, I think one of the best things you can do, which is something that even at NYPL we're doing, is to really create some type of committee or working group to bring people together that really understand that aspect. And so when IT is thinking about a tool, there should be some type of evaluation. There should be some type of vendor evaluation that's happening in your own library systems with your IT departments that will check and make sure, okay, are we okay with what this AI is going to do, how they're going to use the data, what information they're going to take? Are they saying that everything that our librarians input they're going to use to feed or train their system. And then as an organization, determining whether or not you're okay with that. And if not, creating policies that will then dictate that. That then means also having a component of training in. I do believe that there should be open transparency and communication about a tool. If the IT department decides they're going to use a tool that has AI, it should be explaining to the organization, hey, we're going to use this tool. It has this. This is why. And not just blanketly just kind of putting it out there and saying, you know, hey, there's this thing. And I think that training has to be incorporated. And it needs to come from various different levels, because I think that how people think about AI and use the tool for middle level managers might be different from the senior level managers, might be different from the entry level position. So I think that there needs to be a thought process in what does training look like for each category.
That's helpful. Thank you. The next question is, do you know of any organizations that offer AI specialists to provide presentations for library programs?
Do I know any AI specialists that offer
presentations for library programs?
Yeah, I have a few names. There's one in particular. He's actually an open AI ambassador. His name is Abram Abran, Abran Maldonado. He's really amazing. He's an open AI ambassador, but he's also created his own AI tool. And he travels around, and he's based out of here in New York. And he's amazing. So that's one that I can offer right now.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Let's see, another question came in. Do you think it's important for libraries to have an AI policy? And if so, do you have any advice for those that have not started one yet?
Absolutely. It's time to get your departments together and start talking about what you will and won't accept, what are going to be the requirements, what are going to be the repercussions if things aren't followed, taking a look at what is already being used within your organization and understanding that. I think that the first step is to kind of do a two-step. Find out what's already being used by people in your organization, whether you do it as a survey, whether you talk to all different levels to figure out what are they using and how are they using it, and what would they also like to use it for that they have not. At the same time, you need to start taking a look once again at what are the vendor policies, because for instance, and I won't forget when this happened, I was in Cali, and we were at a summit that was specifically about AI for libraries, and someone had just said, oh yeah, I just got the new Microsoft Copilot on my device, and they hadn't had training. Nobody said, oh, when you get this, here's what this means, or don't put this in here, or any of that. And so it basically got dispersed out into the organization, and there was nothing about anything. Policies need to be in place. You don't want to end up in a situation where somebody puts some information or uploads a document or a file or something thinking that, oh, well, I assume that when they gave it to me, it meant that I could use it for work purposes because I've got it. So you want to be very careful. But yes, put a policy in place. Getting started is exploring, finding out what people are using, and then having, I would say, the back end of the organization working on what's going to be accepted and not.
Very important things to consider there for sure. Do you have any recommendations for Google Gemini specifically? And have you used that tool, and do you know anything about it in terms of pros and cons?
I can get you some pros and cons about it. I don't use it often because our company doesn't want you to use it. So I don't use it often, but I have used it. You know, for me, it's just at the moment, for me, it's just another tool that you type in, it dishes out some information. I haven't gotten to the point where I'm ready to upload any type of documents to it or anything like that to see what it will do. But I will say this, if you are going to try things out, what you want to make sure that you do is you take out all PII. Just take it all out. If you're gonna, I've seen people where they'll like maybe copy, they want to do a response to somebody or do a response to email. They might copy something that's in there, like put initials or, take out your company name and try things out. The same way we used to do when we had Microsoft come out and, you needed to create a fake spreadsheet, and stick it in there and see what happens to test out. The product, but then also you want to test the differences. It's really important that you compare. Like one of the reasons why I love Perplexity so much is because I love that it gives a source. So I'll give just one specific thing that happened. I needed to go to Baltimore and the Baltimore Bridge had just come down, maybe, I don't know, a week or two before that. And I had wanted to just see whether or not ChatGPT versus Perplexity would tell me that, yes, in this drive up there, is there going to be a difference between the two? And it took me so many prompts to get ChatGPT to recognize or say to me, like, oh yeah, you might want to think about the bridge that recently came down. Versus as soon as I put it in, Perplexity was letting me know, bridge is down, and here's the source. And that's one of the reasons why people love Perplexity so much, is it provides sources. However, it also doesn't do the same thing that ChatGPT does. So, understanding the differences is going to be key.
Right, so important. And maybe piggybacking off of what you just said, someone was asking if you have any examples of how you are using AI tools at New York Public Library, and if you have any favorite ones. Perhaps Perplexity is one of those.
One of them, yes. Perplexity, I actually use the paid version of ChatGPT because I like the fact that you can use every aspect, that it's using the internet and kind of getting the data. I like Otter AI. That's one where it's good at kind of listening, taking the notes, and then giving you a really good summary without you feeling like you have to, redo summaries. Like there's some tools out there that I've seen people use. Think Meet Geek might have been one of them. And I was just like, after the meeting, somebody had used it, and I was just like, I feel like I got to go in and adjust what was said. So yeah, I would say, Claude isn't bad, but yeah, right now, those are the ones. I do think Copilot is really great, depending on, what you're using it for, especially if you're trying to analyze some data. It's nice. It's real nice.
Great, thank you. Lots of things to check out after this. And maybe we have time for one more. Do you have any recommendations for talking with kids about AI and using it? It seems like an inevitability of the world, just like generations before us. Kids always seem to have some of the quickest understanding of new tech. So any advice for how to address that subject with kids or teens specifically?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the things that we've been doing. I think there should really be, having kids doing the difference of facts. Like, I think that's one of the best ways to show kids or teens kind of, is this fact or not? Like doing the research. Okay, you put this stuff in and it outputs this thing. Now, let's go back. Let's take a look. Is this actually true? Is this what it's supposed to be? Helping them to identify, is there any bias in it and what that could look like? But then also it helps to then explain to them copyright laws and laws in general. A good example is we had a teen contest. It was an art contest. And this was early on, I would say maybe even like a year back. And the person who we thought it won, come to find out that they, through some review later on down the road, that they had actually used AI to do their image. And so we had to figure out really quick, what are we going to do if they used AI? Like, is this them creating that? And so, but also knowing that you don't want to make the child feel scared about what they've done. And right? So like even how you address it and talk to them. And so, we really just found out like, oh, okay, you use what tool and what were the prompts you gave it, right? We're trying to see if they were using their own creativity and how much prompting and engineering of the prompts was happening to get them to the output that was used. So I think that's kind of one of the ways to go about things. And I also like some of the quizzes out there where you have, is it real or fake? And they have it where it's not just images, like is the writing real or not? Is another one that's out there. So
Great. Thank you so much. Well, that's all the time we have for today. If you wouldn't mind advancing to the last slide too. I want to first extend a huge thank you to you, Dr. Brandy McNeil, for this presentation, and to my colleague behind the scenes, M. Gallagher, for their support on this webinar. I would also like to thank the Institute for Museum and Library Services for making this work possible. The archived version of the session will be available to view online within 48 hours. We want to encourage everyone to attend the other 4 sessions in this series. The link is on the screen now, but we will also drop it in the chat really quick. The next session will be on October 30th and will focus on data security and privacy. And one final note, as you exit today, you will be prompted to take a brief survey. Please take a minute to fill it out. Your feedback is extremely valuable in helping to continue this important work. So I want to thank everyone again for coming and have a great afternoon. Thanks.